Healing is more you. That's my motto. Healing is more you. And how do you get to more you? You get rid of what's not you. I developed what's called SolaraGem, which is basically a mixture of light, color, frequency, and gemstones. Light bathes the gemstones inside of here. And it's also usually strobing at different brainwave frequencies. I remember one time we had a girl who was a nurse. She was embarrassed because she started crying during one of the sessions. And I'm like, no, don't feel embarrassed. That's wonderful. You're crying. That means you let something break through that needed to come to the surface.
Welcome to the Quantum Lens podcast. I'm your host, Oksana Hansen. This is a space where science meets soul, a heart-centered, conscientious podcast designed to nurture your spiritual, emotional, and physical well-being through the wisdom of quantum biology, holistic healing, and a deep self-discovery. We'll explore what it truly means to live in alignment. If you're ready to open your heart, expand your mind, you're in the right place.
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for coming on the Quantum Lens podcast today.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Mike is the developer of something called SolaraGem, which I guess I will let you introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, Mike Broadwell. I developed what's called SolaraGem, which is basically a mixture of light, color, frequency, and gemstones. And I'll just give you a very quick view of it here. It doesn't show up too well in the light, but basically it's a little thing here that attaches to a light, and light bathes the gemstones inside of here. And it's also usually strobing at different brainwave frequencies. And then we swap out different gemstone mixtures, and we use it all over the body to help with stress, pain, emotional balance, and things like that. So I've worked with this technology for about 13 years. I developed my own a little over 4 years ago, started selling it, and been all over the country, worked with people like Joe Mercola and Norm Shealy in the past, with a lot of the integrative holistic doctors that are into, pretty wide range of things. So
how did you get into like crystals and healing and all that kind of stuff?
Kind of indirectly. I was in technical sales. I'm an engineer by background, and I started one of the first summits back in 2009 on energy medicine. Just kind of fell into that from starting to learn how to use the internet. A friend wanted me to help market a book, and I didn't know anything about it. I said, maybe I should learn. Then when I moved to Tennessee, I met another friend who worked at the realtor's office, and she wanted to work from home. And I said, well, all right, I'm still doing my sales. You can do this stuff from home, and I'll kind of fund it till we get started. And I told her one time, I said, you talk all the time. We should figure out how to monetize that. So we created a summit, and it was one of the early ones, and we did really well with it. It was actually a practical use for energy medicine, energy healing back in 2009, 2010, and 11, back in that time frame. And we had a lot of the big people, Dr. Alex Lloyd, Donna Eden, Brad Nelson, a lot of the people you might know of kind of from that era of kind of the pioneers of kind of getting energy medicine out into the world. We ended up having some problems. One of the people I partnered with to do the back end ended up being kind of a thief and stole a bunch of money and wrecked everything, which happens a lot, in business and all. But anyway, I went to 2011. I went to a bioenergetic conference in North Carolina that was just amazing. Eileen McKissick was there. She was just coming out with her dissertation on biofield tuning, hadn't even written a book or anything yet. Claude Swanson, who passed a few years ago, but has written big, thick books on the physics of energy and bioenergy. Carl Merritt, a lot of really fascinating people were there. And I ran across a similar type device from a company out of the UK. And I just sat on the table or lay on it for 20 minutes and just completely chilled out with all the noise and everything going on. I thought it was really cool. The guy that ran the company was a Belgian guy named Lawrence Halen, and he was kind of frustrated because he wasn't getting traction over here. And I said, well, I bought one, and I said, let me see if I can help. I have this big list of energy healing people, but it was very challenging to get people to look at it. Anyway, unfortunately, he died the next year of kind of a freak heart condition, apparently, and his partner took over, and I worked with her for several years until she kind of decided not to pay me a bunch of money right before this scamdemic. So that kind of led me to branch out and make my own. So anyway, but I was the main rep for several years. in the US for that. And I became one of the main trainers. I kept telling her, why do you keep flying across the country to do trainings? Just let me do the training. So I took over doing a lot of the trainings over here. And then, so it's kind of a natural fit. When I left, I changed some things up, made it a lot less expensive, worked with a 40-year crystal expert named Charles Matthew, who had worked with Marcel Vogel and goes way back into the crystalline energetics world. And so he helped me with some special combinations of crystals. And I put in an actual color therapy system from Dinshaw and just really brought down the cost and upped the reliability. So that's kind of the history of it.
Cool. So you and I are very similar because we were both like in the tech industry, and then we kind of moved over to holistic healing. But what was it that really drove you? Like, what made you believe? What is energy healing? And maybe let's start there. Like, for people who might be new to energy healing, and what made you believe in it, and so much so that you developed your own company around it?
Well, I think, the first kind of introduction was probably from Mercola back when he had the big website on natural health, and he had EFT, had all these DVDs from Gary Craig back in the day of tapping and EFT. And when I got into the summits, we just started interviewing experts in energy, and it was really cool learning with all the technical frustrations and all to put something together like that. Were pretty big events with, 24 experts over 12 weeks usually, and a lot of stuff going on. But it was interesting because it would make me very conscious, because I'd be working on the summit, editing or whatever. I'd like, I'm getting irritated, but I would be conscious of it because I'm editing something that's talking about conscious, your own thoughts and tuning into your energy. So it was reinforcing all the message as I was going through that. But I really think it's important that people understand that this is just how we work. And it first came out, everybody thought it was woo-woo, and it was very, very different. I think the new generation, everybody's used to it now. I run into, these young people in their 20s now that are, oh yeah, we know about Reiki, and, in Alabama, we know about it now. But whereas before, like, what is that? But I like to tell people too, if you really think of subtle energy, because we can make things complicated unnecessarily. The subtle energy really drives almost everything. Because if you think about at whatever level, like we know people at a cartoon level, like this is my dentist and he has a receptionist and he has a couple of technicians that clean my teeth or whatever. And, that's kind of a cartoon level of but what's the subtle energy would be, what's the interactions going on in the office? Is the dentist having family trouble at home? Is he having an affair with the secretary? I mean, all these things going on behind the scenes that you don't know. You're just there to get your teeth cleaned. But the energy of the office, the feeling, the mood of it is going to be impacted by what's going on in the unseen or subtle energetic connections and things. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big part, just to understand that this is just normal life. But the way what's going on in the background that we would never talk about, I'm in the dentist, I'm going to clean your teeth or whatever, but these have a huge impact on how happy the dentist is, maybe how well he does his job. All this stuff is impacting our lives all the time. And so if we're not aware of it, then it's having an effect on us that's just completely, we're blind to.
So what would be some ways that people can tune into or start practicing, noticing the subtle energies?
It's really just being aware of our surroundings, aware of our thoughts, our feelings, and noticing what impacts those. Because when we start to become self-aware or aware of our inner world, then we will start to see, oh, wait a minute, I started getting angry at this, or I got impatient, or I did this. And we start to see how our emotional states are shifting based on the things around us. And the more aware we are, the more alive we are. The more subtlety we can pick up, the more flavor we can pick up in that, little baked good or that pie or whatever we love to eat. The more our palate is refined, the more we can kind of enjoy the subtleties again of that. So it's about becoming self-aware and becoming just tuned in to everything around us. The more aware we are, the more alive we are.
What's also really present for me lately is being more self-aware leads to higher emotions. And it actually is making me very angry at myself because I'm like, dang it, life was so much easier when you're not aware of these things. But because I'm so in tune now with my body and my emotions, I'm having, like, I would say, bigger flares of emotions. And so I'm trying to navigate the waters of these things that are coming up. And yeah, it's been difficult.
Well, it's important to realize this is part of life and it's a good thing. I do a lot of these little immersion weekends where people really go immersed into the SolaraGems and experience them, how to use them, how to really incorporate them in their daily life or their practice or whatever. And I remember one time we had a girl who was a nurse and she was embarrassed because she started crying during one of the sessions. And I'm like, no, don't feel embarrassed. That's wonderful. You're crying. That means you let something break through that needed to come to the surface. And so often we've kind of grew up with this belief system that we should always feel better or something's wrong. Like I'm going backwards because I don't feel good. And that's a complete misnomer. What's really we want to do is to break through the things that are we may be holding things together, but then that's where the things built up that catch us unaware and build up over time. We want to be aware of what's going on. Doesn't mean we want to just start weeping, in the middle of a business meeting or something like that. But the more we can be aware and the more we can be tuned into the others, the emotions of those around us, especially when you have children like you do, or, family members, and you're running a big events, and you really got to tune into how are people accepting this? How are they doing with it?
And especially what you just said about the children is you could be doing anything. And then as soon as your child has a emotion, you have to stop and you have to kind of change what you're doing to become a vessel for comfort, for, helping them process their emotions and things like that. So children are definitely a good way to train yourself. It's kind of like a subtle reminder, right? Of, wow, kids do have these big emotions, and sometimes you watch the kids and you're like, we forget some of these things as we get older.
Oh yeah, we forget, and then we get kind of, we work by memory. Our what we call the ego is really just our conditioned mind, our conditioning that we need. We need to learn all these tasks because this life is very complicated when you start writing down every single thing you do. How do you brush your teeth? How do you wash your face? How do you do all these things? But we just learn to do them by rote. But the more we just live by rote and don't bring that self-awareness and creativity, the more we kind of are enter into entropy, and we just become more kind of compressed, and we lose that joy of life, that beauty, that spark. And I think that's huge because we're designed not to fail when we lose consciousness. Like we can drive the car and kind of tune out of what, and we still drive the car and get there. And that's great that our conditioned mind is designed to run the ship when we're not paying attention. But it's also can become very boring and run down if we let that conditioning run everything and lose that spark of who we are in the process, and creativity and love and all that.
Yeah, Eric and I, my husband and I, are going through some changes right now because this year we're really focused on living with intention, because the way I describe it is we just felt like we were on a hamster wheel. We were living the same year over and over again. And we always say that, like, comfort is when you're not growing. Growing should be uncomfortable, or is uncomfortable, not should be. Growing can be uncomfortable. And so we're making some big shifts to make our life in much more alignment with the intentions that we're setting. And it is uncomfortable. We're listing our house and we want to buy a piece of land. And our dream is really to own and operate like a cool little communal living retreat center, have a piece of land, have a little farm. But yet this old self, she keeps popping back up and is like, right? And so So even though we're moving towards like our intentions and where we want to be in life, like that ego is loud. It's like, but what about comfort and security and all these things, right? So it's growth is hard sometimes, and you're going to have all those emotions, and they're all valid too.
Absolutely. I mean, that conditioning is very profound, yet very necessary. And our biggest problem is we kind of treat healing and health as if we're a black box, right? I mean, because I'm a bit older than you, but I go back into when you just go to the doctor and they give you a pill and you just trust the doctor and you get well usually. And did the pill do it or not? Usually there's, you probably forget about it by the time you feel better. You probably even forget about the doctor visit, but it's not like an instant fix. Usually they give you a pill and boom, I feel good. But we still kind of carry this kind of fix me mentality still. And that's the biggest challenge that I see, because I go into a lot of clinics, I do a lot of conferences and things, and it's the mindset that we carry in is still in this fix me mode, taking me into the dealership to fix my elbow or something, and it's so confused. And it really hit me that, if we treated our relationships like we treat ourself, we'd probably be divorced and single, right? Like, oh, if I give her some flowers, will she shut up and let me watch the football game? I mean, you wouldn't treat your spouse that way, but we treat our body that way. If I take this pill, will this elbow quit barking at me so I can go out and play my tennis match or whatever it is? And our relationship with ourselves is the most intimate relationship we have, because I'm a bachelor, but you're married. I mean, probably every day you probably think, who is this guy? Do I know him, right? There's always something new that comes up. Who is this child? Where did it come from? Because we just can know so little of somebody, even of ourselves. And so, but we should treat ourselves as the most beautiful, intimate relationship ever. And yet but our mind has to break things down in order to, so we have to kind of go into this dead world of things and words and all that to figure things out, but we lose ourselves in it constantly. And I think one of the biggest challenges for me is that people are like, well, what does this do? It's like, is this a wrench for the oil filter? Or, that's not really a good question, because what this does is impact you on a level that's like, it's just like with a relationship with your child or your spouse or your family. You don't just do everything because I know if I give her flowers, she will do this, 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 and this. Or if I give her chocolate, she'll do this, this, and this. No, you don't think of that. It's just you give out, oh, here's some chocolate. Oh, she'd love this. Let me bring it to her, or whatever. It's all about making the relationship more deeper and profound and more solid. And that's really what using a tool like SolaraGem is about. Yes, it will help with pain. It will help with stress and all that. But it's just, we try to fit it into the assembly line, and that, how does it work? It just makes it very difficult because we walk past the value of so many things.
So many gems in what you just said. Yeah. And I think that relationship with yourself, it's sacred. And I think a lot of us, I would say women, I'm not sure. I don't know men that well. I know my husband, but we've been together since we were 18. But it's really easy to kind of forsake yourself, especially as women, when you're the caretaker of the house and the family and the children. So I really liked what you said there about the relationship with yourself has to kind of come first. I know women usually talk about like self-care, but it's hard. It's hard to take time away for yourself. And it's hard to create routines or things around a life that is chaotic sometimes too.
Chaos is great. It's just part of life. And even, I think what they call chaos theory, which I only know on a very surface level, but it makes a lot of sense in the sense that life falls apart and where you reform at a higher level constantly. And I think that just describes how our conditioned mind is all based in the past. It's all there to keep us safe, comfortable, but it's not conscious. So its view of things constantly gets collapsed because all of a sudden something hits us that doesn't fit within this little cage. And so it's blown apart and it has to reform with a slightly bigger cage or fishbowl or whatever analogy. And this is just normal. And when we're little, it happens a lot more. Like, oh, there's no Santa Claus. Some kid tells you at school, and you're all upset. Well, but you get over it, and you think, okay, well, how would one fat guy get down 100 million chimneys in one night? Okay, I guess I understand life a little better. And then you fall in love the first time. Your heart breaks. The world's going to end, and yet it doesn't. You get a little more depth. But most of us will just stop growing at the point when we're not forced to anymore. That's why so many adults seem to act like they're still in high school when they run into problems. But we just constantly have to break down this thing. And I think that's what really is the gospel's about. If you talk about take up your cross, what does that really mean? Well, he hadn't even been on the cross yet. And the disciples didn't even believe him when he told that was going to happen. So it must have meant something else. The meaning's kind of read back in. But I think it means we have to look for these things like you're talking about. Where is something that I know is holding me back, even though it's not really something that anybody would say anything about or would really stop me, other than I want to be more of something that just following the herd is not allowing me to do. So that's kind of taking up that voluntary chaos to break it down, and they'll see how it comes. Moving out in the country, from a nice place in town next to the Whole Foods and all this stuff. Now I'm out in the country, and a kid hurts himself. I can't just run him next door to the quick care and have him bandage it up.
Right.
So yeah, it's life is just kind of this beautiful thing, and it's okay to be comfortable and safe. We want that in times, but it can really be a trap. So
it's funny that you bring up the gospel, because I posted a video yesterday on Instagram. I don't know if you saw it, but I was talking about iron sharpens iron, and how most people think that that's a positive thing. It's like, oh, you lift everybody up. But honestly, sharpening an iron, like, it's rough, like, it's uncomfortable, it's hard. And I was saying how I want the people around me who are expecting more of me, who want me to be a better person, who challenge me. I don't want a bunch of people to just agree with me. Like, I want to be challenged. Like, I want to grow. And that's what that verse means to me is, again, sometimes it's not always fun and games. It's not always a comfortable life, but that's how it should be.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about he's a refiner's fire. I just saw some little video, and they were talking about a verse where he said he's like the silversmith who is refining silver. And so these ladies were having a Bible study and said, well, what does that really mean? And so one of them said, well, I'll go find out. So she went visit the silversmith and said, can I watch you work? And so he gets to the point. She goes, how do you know that? She goes, do you have to sit that close to the fire yourself the whole time? Oh, yeah, I got to be right here. And I got to keep my eye on it every minute. And I can't let it go too far. She says, well, how do you know when it's just right? He goes, I can see my reflection in it or see my image. And it was like a beautiful thing of this. We think we're being put through this alone, but when you really look at how we work, God actually recreates our experience in every instant. Yes. And so he experiences everything that we do in each moment, in each instant. And that's why I think that once we recapture what we're really talking about with the gospel, we kind of lost it. It became boring. It became, the standard. And then it just became, whatever. We lost that fire and that spark with it. But if you really look at what it's talking about in the flesh versus the spirit, I think it's simply this ego mind, this mechanical part that keeps us alive is the flesh. And that's what gets corrupted through bad parenting, bad society, or just us making bad decisions. But the part of you that's you never changes. And that's the part that's that white purity that is just trapped in this kind of confusion and locked in. And so the flesh versus the spirit is just, how does the spirit actually take ownership and run the ego mind or the conditioned mind? Because we still need it. It still protects us from walking in front of cars and doing stuff.
Mm-hmm. Something else you said that was really interesting that I just want to go back to also was, this came up for me. Nico was staying with me for the retreat that you were just at as well. And we had a little workshop the morning after the retreat. And we were working on things that were holding us back. We did some processing and hypnotherapy and stuff like that. And I said to him, and this is very vulnerable, so just to share with you. I said to him, when I look at myself in the mirror, my outside doesn't match like how I feel on the inside. And he said to me, he goes, because you don't recognize yourself when you look in the mirror, because what you're looking at is the sum of all your past. And that's not where you're headed. You're moving to the future. And you just said that same thing. And that's how we kind of have to know that sometimes as we're working through our healing process, that our physical, our mind, our emotion, our spirit might be way further ahead than maybe our physical body. And that just takes time to get in alignment or kind of autocorrect.
Oh yeah, the older you get, the worse it is. I mean, I look at the mirror like, oh geez, I was at some place the other day, a barbecue place up north of Nashville, and over the weekend, and it had a little sign that said, "It's weird being the same age as old people because you don't feel any older, other than sometimes."
Right.
And so yeah, it's true. We are so caught up in this image of ourselves. And it's funny because we need it to move ahead. It's like, but we're actually here to elevate the material world, the world of matter, into the world of spirit, in a sense. That's kind of one of the oldest things out there, that in all the teachings of the ancients, but in a practical sense, it's very simple in a way. We're kind of here, and God makes this kind of, because if you look at a challenge that God would have, like you're a parent, so you want your children to be everything and more than you are. Any good parent would. But yet, how much is God portrayed as this horrible parent that would be put in jail if, he wants to whack you and burn you forever if you screw up? That's not him at all. He's like the best parent. So if you take a challenge of how would you make somebody from nothing to be as good or better than you are, that's a pretty interesting thing. How would you do it? You can't just make them like you or love you, because that would be like a pet or a robot or something. So it's kind of like he would almost have to give you a head start in this kind of robotic, mechanical way that allows you to constantly have to learn, be safe enough to learn and not change too fast, but be able to ride through the changes and learn to, because his whole ultimate goal is for him to experience everything this whole universe has to offer. So it's a marvelous way of looking at it. And I think if you really break down like the book of Hebrews, which is very complicated, and I'm not a great Bible scholar. I read it so much growing up, but it's hard to get it out of your head because of the way we're kind of conditioned around it. But he's basically saying he's making us to be like a child that can run and jump on his lap anytime we want to. That's kind of going back to that childlikeness when we were little and we just went out and played and we did whatever. But we want to now learn to do things and exist and have something in the world, but yet still get to that point of that playfulness and that openness. And I'm not there, but I can see that this is really what the message is all about. It's to be like that child again, but with the knowledge and the wisdom and the ability to go out and actually create and make things happen. I think that's our goal. And we start from that instead of starting from these individual things. And, we start out like individual. What fixes this? What fixes that? Which one does what? But ultimately, it's like, no, how do I break out of these limitations, like you're saying?
Well, and also with the free will, it's right. Like I look at my kind of responsibility as a parent is to allow my children to fail, to allow my children to learn the lessons to have their own free will, not be controlled or told what to do every second of every day. And also, I guess I would call it like dangerous play safely. Like you want to climb a tree, like not stop them from having their own journey. And I talk about this in my boundaries class that I teach, but I think that anytime that rescuer archetype comes in, and I was that person, I was the rescuer in my family for a lot of years. People would call me and I would take care of their problems because I could. I felt like I could. I've had the financial means to do that. And it kind of caused a lot of issues because as soon as I started setting boundaries and not doing that anymore, people were kind of like, what's going on? But what I realized as a part of this journey in this lifetime that I had as that kind of rescuer role was I wasn't allowing people to have their own spiritual journey because I would jump in and I would rescue it, and I was taking away from their journey. And so once I realized that, I had to really take a step back and self-reflect on what I was doing. And once that happened, I had to change the way that I was showing up in the world as when it comes to that.
Yeah, that's a big challenge for people like us that are in the healing professions. And, we start out really wanting to help people, but it's really not what it's about. And Vernon Howard, who died several years ago, but you can still find his talks on YouTube and all, and he wrote several books, had a great quote in one of his talks where he said, it's not about helping people. People don't want to be helped because they know that most people trying to help them are really trying to help themselves to them. What people really want is somebody who's a real human being, because then they're like, that gives them hope that, wow, there's somebody that actually gives me hope. Because it doesn't have to be everybody. I remember the first time I went to New York City, I'm walking down, Fifth Avenue or whatever, Broadway or whatever. It's like, wow, there's so many good looking women up here. Then I realized, actually, there's not that many. It's just there's so many people that but it's kind of like that in life. One really powerful person can undo 1,000 kind of mediocre or, boring or whatever people, it's not a one-to-one. We don't have to win by majorities. Just one can make such a big difference. If you think in our lives, that one or two or three people that made such a difference out of all the hundreds of people we met. So yeah, it's really just all about finding that. And these roles just get us started in a direction, because it's not about knowing from the beginning. How do we know from the beginning? We constantly have to course correct. And faith is really staying with the program. Like, well, this may not be the right direction, but I know this can't be true. So let me try this. This can't be right. So maybe this isn't either. But we constantly take that different path. And that's what I see in the healing world is it's really forced me, because it's been so challenging to, how do I really explain this to people? How do I get them? Because people we want to process it through our mind first. Well, what does this do? And that's a limitation, because this is a filter, and it's not based on consciousness. It's actually unconscious, and it's based on the past. And it's taken me a while to really have to see, it's another teaching of Christ, right? If you do what I teach, you will know the doctrine. You don't know it first and decide if you want to do it. When you do it, you're like, oh, okay, this is why. Because we can't see it with this. This is a purposefully limiting thing. And that's the challenge of anything. We know we have something great to offer, but nobody sees it. Nobody cares. Why was Christ born in the manger? Nobody really cared. Nobody could see it. That's the way life is. And that's okay. That's the way it would have to be, really, if you think about it logically.
When Eric and I pray, we always say this or something better, because sometimes we think this is what we want, but then maybe God has a different plan for us. Maybe it is something much bigger than what we are imagining.
Exactly. And that's really what makes tools like the SolaraGem. And I'm sure there's other things out there, but most things out there are pretty linear, like, okay, this will improve your blood flow, or this will do that. And we can kind of make sense of it. But what I see with the SolaraGem, very much so, is it's actually removing contradictions, removing cloudiness, removing noise, so that the clarity can somehow come, and then things flow. It's just like when I can't think of something and like, oh, I'll think of it in a minute. Well, you start doing something else, your mind clears, and boom, it pops in. And that's really the right approach to healing is just remove what's not you. It's not fixing me or making me like this person or that person or whatever. It's removing what's clearly not me, what's contradictory. How do I remove those things that can't be true? Because the way to know what's true is eliminate what's not true. It's the only way we can know something's true is to show that the opposite cannot be true. And there is a method. There's a method, my friend there, even in Franklin, David Mills, he calls it law of implication. He rediscovered the method. How do you know what's true? And it's profound but it's challenging because it's really getting to that core operating system, that whole method of how do we know what's true? It's not a source of truth. In fact, looking for the source blocks us from the method. Because even we think, well, I'll just go to the Bible or something like that. Well, that's wonderful. But what is your source for knowing what the Bible means? Is there a dictionary built in that tells you what all the words? Of course there's not. Those words don't mean the same thing they did in 1608 or whenever the King James was translated or whatever these modern. So there's a deeper method to how we even know anything. And until we get clarity on that, we would, it's not that there's anything wrong with these other things. They're wonderful. But if we go to them from the wrong place and don't have the right method of following them, then we're going to constantly be brought into dead ends. And especially in our healing, that's a big thing, because we think, well, we start with the physical. Well, what'll fix this? And then finally, the last thing we do is look at the inner world. What are the conflicts? What's going on with me? But yet our body's designed to tell us, our mind, all that stuff will tell us what's wrong with us if we just know how to read the signs.
Yeah, it's interesting because I always tell people, I'm like, I knew I had cancer. It was like my energy just shifted, and I know my body really well. And so I always tell people, you are your best source for knowing what's going on in your environment, because you will start to notice subtle energy shifts the more aware you become of your own self and space. And I mean, you could do blood work, you could go to the doctor, you could run tests and do all those things, but you yourself, you know better than any doctor could tell you what's going on with you.
We really know a lot more than we want to let on, and we're scared of that. And it's hard because, but we really know when we're doing something wrong. Even when we're little, I kind of know it, and our energy does work against us, and the body does keep the score, and the body, we can't lie with it. And I have a friend, Virginia Dixon, out in California that has a program called Rest, and she talks about that. She teaches, one is you got to get the core trauma, but you also get your life aligned with the laws of God, the laws of nature. There is a way that we're made to work. And if we go against that, our body knows that. And we set up this tension. And it's that tension. Mm-hmm. That's why things like muscle testing work. And it's there, and it's right there in front of us. And yet we get locked into these goals and these patterns. And that's the trick of life, right? Is we're being brought up to function at a higher level. And we have to go through kind of the softening. It's kind of like the colors, right? Women, you guys have like 80 something colors, and guys have like 8, right? It's like green. No, it's not green. It's, or whatever, or chartreuse or whatever. So it's like you tend to see more shades of things. And that's a richness that a lot of us just don't have. We're much more linear in ways. And that's why we need each other. We complement each other. But it's all about the more we can learn to see in those shades of our own inner awareness. Because what I find is our minds just create these belief systems that lock us in. Even what is cancer, right? Is it really a thing? I mean, it's something, but by just creating it, locking it into, it's cancer and it's dangerous, I'm going to die and I need all that, no. This is actually something is in contradiction, and how do I move out of that? And it has all aspects, and most of it's right here. Mm. And they even say most of the people that undergo chemo, like 40-50% of them, is because their family is pushing them into it, because their family's scared. Go to the doctor, don't do this weird stuff, go to the doctor. And people are like, okay. Mm. And that's just because the older generation, they have different patterns, they had different things to overcome, and they didn't have all the breadth of awareness and choices, but it's hard to take your own stand for yourself against all this barrage. And so we have to make ourselves prepared internally for when things like that come. But it can be very, very easy to just succumb to what somebody else wants you to do.
Yeah. It's really shifting from fear to empowerment instead, and trusting the process and trusting your body and trusting God and trusting nature. And we were just at Return to Nature last month. I guess oh my gosh, what, a week ago now, 2 weeks ago. Right. And it was just such a beautiful healing event as I'm watching all the survey responses come in, and people had phenomenal transformations and shifts. But I can just attribute that to the beautiful space that we were in, also kind of getting away from the everyday life. The people that were there were so amazing. And I think it just really kind of opened people up to have big shifts. So thank you for being a part of it too.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you for allowing me to. And yeah, and it's interesting because I even had one lady in particular, I could tell she was a little distant. You know, it wasn't anything bad, but she was just a little standoffish. And then I put her under the SolaraGems, and she got up, and there was a softness to her, which I don't think she even noticed the shift, but there was a discernible shift. And again, it wasn't like she was awful, or it was just subtle. But these are the shifts that we can help people achieve that are so much more profound than we give them, credit for. And so that space, like you created it, adding all those things in and just seeing other people that are on the same wavelength. They're not like, oh gosh, they're going to think I'm a weirdo because I do this. It's just the energy makes such a difference by just the positive energy. And any way to create an environment is that you can remove all this toxic kind of reinforcement of this negativity or this just fear conditioning. Because healing is more you. That's my motto. Healing is more you. And how do you get to more you? You get rid of what's not you. And the more aware you are, you can say, well, that's not really me. Why am I doing this? I don't even like this. Why am I doing this? Well, my aunt always made me feel bad if I didn't come over for Thanksgiving or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
But you start seeing what's not you, and it's okay. Well, I don't need to go over there if I don't want to. I can just write her a card and I'll go see her sometime. But, just little things. And the more aware we are, it's just subtle things that could be a huge, because our mind our mind's not even conscious. That's what's really interesting, is you're conscious, but your mind's not, but your mind thinks it is, and it's simulating it, and we think it is, but it's really not. And only you are conscious. But the more subtlety, and this is the deep meditation, that's what it's really about, is calming that stuff down. What I do can put people into meditation much more quickly in a relaxed state like that. But it's like shining the light in the corner. There's spider webs up there. I never shine a light up there. I never knew there were spider webs. But that different slight perspective of seeing yourself like, I don't want that, or oh, I see, this is what's going on. And once you see it, you can drop it. Once you see something is not good for you, clearly, you will drop it. You will not hang on to it. The reason people hang on to addictions or bad habits is there's still something they're getting out of them. Usually it's a blend of things, and it's only one or two things in that blend. So one of the ways to get to it is to kind of break that blending apart. Well, what is this you really need out of this whole blend of things? And usually it's one or two things that are just a pattern stuck. So yeah, anytime you can create that environment like that with all those people, or even in your home, it's just a retreat, because you get away from the city lights to see the stars. You remove what's keeping you from seeing who you are. And that's what we're trying to achieve. And we're not there yet. In the most part, we're still in the transactional state of, even in holistic health, most of it's still transactional. Oh, I don't want a drug, I want a supplement. Well, I got this condition, I'll take this supplement instead of the drug. Well, that's progress, but it's still coming from the wrong frame. And even by just changing the frame, that supplement's going to work better, because you're not trying to force it to fit into that frame. And so the more we can just look about creating, where's the right environment for this. If you and your husband or your family want to be closer to each other, you go away from all the things that distract you and pull you away from each other.
Yes.
It's not about fixing it. How do we fix this? Well, the wrong process. It's the whole wrong thought pattern.
I haven't told many people this, but I'll share this with you and the audience is, my husband and I are both in technology. We had very big jobs, I guess. And we went away on our honeymoon. We said to each other, how are we going to keep this marriage alive? Like both are very hard workers, very demanding careers, traveled a lot. How are we going to make sure that we don't wake up 20 years from now and there's a stranger in the bed next to you? And so on our honeymoon, we made this full list and we made each other a promise that we were going to take all vacation time. We're going to budget for this every year. And we made a huge travel list of all the places we were going to go together. And for us, it was more fun than therapy and cheaper than divorce to just budget to take these amazing trips, no expenses spared, like best restaurants, best hotels, do whatever we want to do on these trips because like you spoke about at the beginning, it's like we're like children on these trips. We're doing the zip lining and the fishing in the ocean in Alaska, and like just amazing things that like as I've even telling you this, like I have a huge smile on my face because we dedicate that time to each other and continue to play and get inspired and just reconnect. And can those things happen at home? Yeah, absolutely. But is it more fun to do it in Alaska? Yes.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And the more you do that, the more just everyday life will become more like that because that's more normal than the grind. And you just start to shift. And you find a time because you left the corporate world. I left it at a time. I got laid off, but I was already burned out with it. And it's like, I'm not going back to that. It was just, I knew it was done. It was done, and it took me like a year or more to decompress because we don't even realize how intensely, compressing that whole world is. And it probably took longer than a year. Just consciously, I knew that it took me a long time. I don't know if I could even go back. I'd probably be useless now because I just can't even function in that way anymore.
I, for sure, would not be able to work a normal job. And I think what became very clear to me over the past month is I'm so passionate about creating these sacred spaces. This event was the most beautiful thing I've ever created or experienced. And the feedback that I'm getting from people, like they want more of it. They want to do it again. So I'll be announcing the dates very soon for next year's event. It's going to be here in Franklin, Tennessee again. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Yeah, I do a lot of 2-day, what I call immersion weekends, just with the SolaraGems. And it's just like a mini retreat, but it's very bare bones. But because we create this environment there, that people are there and they're each seeing the shifts each other's having, and they're engaging because they're each working on each other and they're just learning, what does this do? And they see it, and it is like the shifts that happen are remarkable. So when you really expand that with more people and more conscious stuff coming in, it's just so beautiful. So yeah, I think the more that we can make any moments that we can into this retreat type place, even if it's just 5 minutes, even at your desk, you can take a minute out and just go into a different place. It just refreshes us. So that's beautiful. I think I think the model that you're doing is wonderful. And I'm sure it can be kind of fractalized too, where people can do more smaller things in their communities. And there's a deadness to most stuff out there, even in the holistic world. It's just getting overdone and too much marketing and too much, and I think it's all cracking because it's just, one is I think the younger generation they didn't grow up with that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. They were able to play and have fun and do all this stuff, and they don't think in those terms. So I don't think they can even function in the future. So I think it's not going to work, even if you tried. But I think all of this stuff is going to shift into more and more experiential and connecting and yeah, and having that beautiful space makes such a big difference in nature and all. So yeah, it's wonderful.
Well, Mike, where can people find out more about yourself, your products, your events, summits that you host?
Yeah, the easiest way is through the Solara website, SolaraGem.com, SolaraGem. It's just like sun and gemstones, the sun through gemstones, SolaraGem.com. My phone number's on there, my email, whatever, as a contact form. And I'm happy to talk to anybody because what I'm doing is you're not going to necessarily look at it and get it. And that's cool. But I love to talk to people. I do offer ongoing support. I just had a great story the other day. Somebody called me like, I'm on your website trying to find the shipping costs. I said, well, why? Where do you live? She goes, I'm in Florida. I said, oh, well, because we lost my SolaraGem and my son can't sleep without it. We've had it 2 years and somehow we lost it. I want to get it here as fast as possible. This is Thursday before 4th of July. And so we figured out how to get it to her on Saturday because he can't sleep without it. Well, what is that worth? That as a child that for 2 years is sleeping better because of something like this. So it's like those things, I hear things like that a lot, and that just means so much to me. Like you were saying earlier about having to be able to put something like this retreat that just echoes and echoes and echoes. So how many generations are you impacting with all these people that now are going to have a whole different way of relating to their families, their kids, and all this. So yeah, I love it. And I love everything you're doing. I'm glad that we're pretty close together. Hopefully you won't move too far.
No, we're staying in the area. I mean, we have the lake house down in Alabama. So you will have to let me know if you have one of your summits either in Tennessee or Alabama, because I will be there.
Well, we'll put one on. We can put one together. We'll get together and figure out who who I We'll just throw one together. They're easy to do. And I want to make these fractal because they are easy to put together.
I love what you just said about that ripple effect, because I did some really like a big clearing of energy at the end of the retreat. And I literally felt like generationally, like that I was making an impact in my family. And so I just want people to know that when you work on yourself, you are still affecting the generations before you and sending ripples to the generations after you too.
Yeah, because time really is just part of this thing called the mind that we think of, and it gives us something to hang our experiences on, but it's not real in that sense. And so, yeah, everything affects everything. And we're just getting it rolled out to us in slow motion kind of so we can learn, just like you would with a child. We're still in the sandbox in universal terms, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, how many times do you look back and you're like, that just feels like that was yesterday, and yet it was like 20 years ago? Because time doesn't really exist. It's at any moment, you can have a memory and that takes you back in time. You can think about the future, that takes you forward in time, right?
Oh, yeah. And like you were saying, keeping that creativity, keeping your relationship, because we are designed to create. And I love the Neville Goddard's book, Awakened Imagination, where he talks about Christ in you is the awakened imagination. And he even says that if we're going to be the Son of God, like Christ, which we're supposed to be, brothers and sisters, we have to forgive sins. The Son of God forgives sins. How do we forgive sins? By seeing people as they can be, not as they are. In a sense, who they really are, not as who they are in this messed up way they are, but to hold the space that, no, there's more to this person. And the hardest one to do is ourselves. We're so trying to fit in with everybody and justify ourselves, but there is no justifying. We want to, not harm people and try to bring love to people, try to bring blessing, but really it's not about justifying ourselves to anybody. So anyway, yeah, it's wonderful.
I think this is a perfect segue into the final question that I always ask in this heart-centered podcast, and that is, what does love mean to you?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. I think it does tie in because love, now it's interesting in terms of the law of implication, my friend has rediscovered, our basic foundation is to do unto others, is to not violate morality, not harm somebody, not affect their property, do no harm. That's kind of the baseline. Love is when we sacrificially give of our resources, our time, our energy, whatever, to make someone's experience in this life more meaningful, more beautiful, more goodness. And so I think it's like you're talking about, you create something with your husband. That's love. That's like, we want to get out of the condition and just follow in the tracks and do what everybody's doing. We want to create and account for each. How can I make your experience better? How can I make our family better? That is love. So breaking out, doing this whole process of breaking out of patterns is love. And that's who God is. God is love. So he's teaching us how to love. And love is the foundation. But it's not necessarily this wishy-washy, goofy thing it's portrayed in movies and all that. It's hard sometimes because it requires us to really look at ourselves and overcome these challenges. And so, but yeah, we give of our time, our effort, our resources to make someone's conscious experience better in some way.
Amazing. Love that. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And what a beautiful conversation. And thank you for being a part of Return to Nature. And I hope you'll be there next year as well.
Absolutely. That's my plan. Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Quantum Lens podcast. I hope this episode brought you insight, inspiration, and a deeper connection to your journey. If you've loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Let's keep this conversation going. And until next time, keep aligning, expanding, and embrace the magic of who you are.